I'd like to go ahead and call together a special meeting of the Great Island Advisory Committee for Wednesday, November 29th, 2023. It's 6:31. Everybody's here tonight except Jim Palin, who's traveling for work, so he will not be here for this meeting. So why don't we go ahead and get started. A couple of remarks from me. You heard my summary to the Rules Committee, which I delivered last week. And in that summary, I referred to a fairly extensive process we had undertaken for a long time around what I would call the sort of second piece of the acquisition of the Great Island project, which was to acquire the traffic circle and clean up some accompanying easement rights and easement language associated with that. And so I signed what's called a PSA, or purchase and sale agreement, to initiate completion of that transaction. And when I say initiate, that meant that once that was signed, and it had to then be approved by the Board of Selectmen, which we've done. It then had to go to the Rules Committee in order for it to get assigned to committees of the RTM for consideration. And as I pointed out in my remarks, what the RTM is actually considering and will ultimately have to approve is just the land acquisition, because the traffic circle is a piece of land, and they do need to approve any physical land transactions. I would note that the funding for all of this was approved through earlier appropriations, so there's not a financial approval that's associated with this. It's just the land transaction itself. And those RTM committees, PZ&H, I think, is primary, and F&B is secondary, and they've already launched and started their work on that process. So that was last Monday. Last Tuesday, the Board of Finance met. I gave a summary of the Rules Committee presentation to them, and although they're not formally required to approve and sign off on a land transaction, they did give us a sense of the Board of Finance, and it was unanimous in favor of all this. So following that, then last night was the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. At that meeting, they reviewed some property line adjustments that had to be made for reasons I described in my comments. I won't go through that again, but fairly administrative in nature, as well as the first of two discussions about what's called a mandatory review, which is a consideration of any land acquisition versus the town's plan of conservation and development. You've got to make sure that that acquisition is consistent with the vision or strategy that's incumbent in the town plan of conservation and review. That should be fairly straightforward, simply because this is a very small bolt-on acquisition to the larger Great Island project. But that was kicked off with that meeting last night. I think they'll meet the following later next week for the second and sort of final consideration of that.
And they have it possible.
Yes, and all that came out very positive at that meeting. So nothing was suggested in that session that would cast any of that in doubt or in question. So the remaining meetings we currently have is EPC, the Environmental Protection Commission, that is meeting on the 6th. As I mentioned in my comments, the reason for that is that there are some slight language changes to the easement over the causeway, which is that sort of south road entrance into Great Island that goes over some protected space. And just because it goes over protected space, the EPC needs to do a quick review of the easement language change. And again, we don't expect any difficulty with that. We're still hoping that on the 11th, which is the night of both the State of the Town addresses as well as a meeting of the RTM more broadly, that they will consider the land acquisition based on recommendations from their subcommittees, and hopefully have a final vote on that to approve that acquisition, which will wrap up and finalize all the approvals from the town's end. There still is going to be a bit of time after that for the actual transaction to consummate on the terms that I described last week, but at least by the 11th, hopefully, all of the town approvals will be in place, and the final steps or phases of that acquisition can be completed. I would only say that one point of clarification is that you'll note from some of the maps, and I think even the maps showing up on the screen here, that there's a few roads going into that traffic circle. One of them is what's called Ziggy's Way right now. And I want to emphasize that when we talk about that, is that not?
That's great.
Is it Great Island Road? Okay, even I don't have my name, so that road there. Well, no, the road I'm pointing out is the road that is actually on the Ziegler property itself. That's part of the transaction they're undertaking to sell that property to a buyer. So access to Great Island by the public is not going to be over that road, right? That road is still going to be privately owned. However, as part of the easement language adjustments that I described before, the town will have emergency access rights over that road. So in the event of a fire or some emergency, we will be able to get emergency equipment using that road if we deem it's necessary, but it will not be available for public access. So anyway, short answer, short message is all of this remains in process and according to the timeline that I described last week, and so we're pretty confident that everything is in good order, and I just wanted to give that as a preamble to today's meeting. So next up is after the election, one of the things that we wanted to do was Monica and I have switched jobs now. I'm the first selectman. Monica, as you know, remains on the Board of Selectmen, and as part of that transition, my recommendation would be that she assume chairmanship of this committee, but not my decision. That's something we all collectively have to vote on. I would say that the Board of Selectmen did appoint her as the new representative from the Board of Selectmen to this committee, which would replace me. I'll remain ex officio as a participant in these proceedings, and will be available for updates, and I'll try actually to come to all of your meetings. This is a pretty important project, and so obviously I'll stay closely involved with that. So in that spirit, could I get a motion to approve the appointment of a new chairman?
So moved.
Dan?
I move for Monica to be chairman of the committee.
Okay, may I get a second? Okay, Mr. Burke, all in favor? Okay, terrific. Monica, thank you for agreeing to do this. Congratulations, Madam Chairman, and I hand these proceedings over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be formally a part of your group, not just ex officio. I think we have just a great assortment of knowledge here at this table and in this room, and looking forward to making this, getting this process going even further. So I want to thank John for all of your help on this, and I want to thank Jim Palin also, who, when we're talking about this circle purchase, was it's been a very long process, and Jim and I worked pretty hard on it, and I especially appreciate his help, as well as all of the help of our town staff, town council, etc. And I would just point out one other thing that John said is, so we do have in this purchase, we do have now emergency access for utility and emergency vehicles over Great Island Road. We also have emergency access over Ziggy's Way, which used to be called Coons Point. That's further down on Long Neck, but that is not public property. And so you as the public, we can't use those roads. Those are strictly for emergency access. Okay, so the main way onto Great Island is what we call 23A. It's that entrance from Rings End Road on down. So with that, I'm going to ask Ed Gentile to give us an update, or Tony? Okay, a new face.
I'm not Ed Gentile.
Oh, just as good.
Tony Campanella, Public Works, and I'm just going to update you on what's happened since our last meeting in terms of maintenance. The pool fence at number 40, the White House, has been completed. Check that off the list. The transformer removal work started today, so that's to remove the 4 old electrical transformers, and we will finish tomorrow with that. The squash building roof has been fixed. We did that with our talented in-house staff. The stable roof repair, which is slate and copper, so we got a company to do that. That starts next week. The current landscape bid, the landscape contract runs out December 8th, so he'll be finishing up there. And we awarded a snowplow bid. We don't have a signed contract yet. We just have to get a little more information from the landscaper who was the low bidder, some references, but we expect to have be in contract with them shortly. Any questions?
I do.
Yes.
So are you turning power off tomorrow also?
We are powering off the whole island at 8 a.m. We hope it'll just be maybe 90 minutes, everyone knows about it well in advance. We removed the pink house transformer today because there was no other live transformer next to it. The other ones that we're doing tomorrow have live transformers next to them, so we have to power off the whole island, take the old transformers, move them out of where they are into a safe location, and then we can power back on.
So you didn't cut it today?
Correct. Correct.
And the plow bid, if there's no plowing, is there no payment? or-
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's per, kind of per inch, per salt event. That's how we did it. Yeah. Anything else? Okay,
Thanks, Tony.
thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is discuss and take action on a design for 23A. So again, 23A, the town purchased three parcels, right? 22, 23, 23A. So 23A is the road that comes in. I know it's this kind of strange terminology, but we inherited it. So we have been working very hard on this. We had Redness and Mead, Craig Flaherty was our lead on this, along with Ed Gentile. So I'm going to ask Ed and to lead it off.
You ready? Whenever you're ready. Just give me 1 second. Ed Gentile, Director of Public Works. So as Monica pointed out, we've been doing and designing that entranceway. We'll call it 23A for now. We do have a preliminary process schedule that we're trying to follow right now. So we are, and it's an aggressive schedule to make sure that we can get under construction in the springtime. So, and I had mentioned before, we're going to planning and zoning. We have to go to EPC and then ARB.
And one other thing.
Are you?
Yeah.
So what you're going to have passed out to you now is our schedule. And I will credit Jeremy for spending hours putting this together because we've changed it a couple times. He color-coded it also so that you could follow the different boards.
Yeah, it's not Christmas, it's just
Yeah.
happens to be red and green.
And hopefully it's self-explanatory, but you'll see that there are numerous public hearings, numerous meetings, acceptances, possibly second night of public hearings. So we've built that all into the schedule that you see in front of you right now. And to submit applications to this, we had to have a design. Of course, we went and we've hired Redness and Mead, Craig Flaherty, principal. He's here tonight with us. He will be presenting our design to you today, along with Matt Pop from Environmental Land Solutions. Matt is the landscape architect. He'll be presenting the finer details of the design, how it relates to either plantings, lighting, the entranceway and the pillar areas too. So we're going to give you a whole lot of information tonight on what we plan to do. We spent a whole lot of time putting this together, hopefully with Monica's guidance also, hopefully guiding us in the right direction so that we can submit to EPC and start this process. Okay. Any questions before I hand it over to Mr. Flaherty? They're all anxious to hear from you, Craig. Do you, those drawings, you need them, they're in the way, or are you gonna wing it for now? What was it like?
Well, I think that unfortunately that laser doesn't work, so I'm just gonna have to walk over and point. Or maybe the mouse will work well enough. Okay, yeah, you can move those if people are having trouble seeing.
Okay.
Hey, Craig,
Yes,
when you do this, can you help,
I'll do an orientation.
yeah, and can you help the group focus on what we need to make a decision on tonight
Absolutely.
to move it forward?
Absolutely.
To hit this calendar?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Craig Flaherty. I'm a principal and senior engineer with Redness and Mead, a land use consulting company with offices in Stamford, Connecticut. I'm also a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. And as a town citizen and town volunteer, I just want to thank you all for your service. This is going to require a lot of attention, and I appreciate the people in this room that are volunteering to give it that attention. So I'm going to start with a basic just orientation. So here's Rings End Bridge. This is parcel 23A. The existing driveway on parcel 23A is only 16 feet wide, and that 16 feet includes the cobblestone gutters you see on either side of the road. So this parcel 23A will be the public's access to get on and off the island, right? This is the stone-lined causeway. This is the tree-lined causeway over to the island from the cul-de-sac of Great Island Road, this being the piece of property that the town is now a contract purchaser of, the cul-de-sac of Great Island Road. So since, Highway 23, since that driveway is too narrow for two-way traffic, the first meaningful infrastructure improvement on the island is to replace effectively that 16-foot wide driveway with a two-way, 22-foot wide road effectively. In addition to the paved vehicular path, we are proposing a sidewalk, and I'll show you these all in a second. I'm just going to broad overview. We are proposing a sidewalk. There are some retaining walls necessary, and landscaping and lighting. And then just to round out the conversation you heard earlier, this is Ziggy's Way. Again, there will be no public access available over Ziggy's Way, only the potential for emergency access if it is so determined that is needed. That's the broad overview. Effectively, we're going to be presenting to you tonight the permit drawings, which you have before you in reduced format, that, given your consent, we will file with the Environmental Protection Commission tomorrow morning, and ARB and Planning and Zoning next week. So that's really the base decision, is you feel that the drawings are developed enough that we can start the land use entitlement process to get them approved by EPC, ARB, and P&Z. There will be time both through that process and any comments from you where we could make minor revisions to those plans if you deem them appropriate and necessary. So now let's get into the details. I'm going to start actually with the circulation plan. So we saw the existing condition. This imagines the proposed condition of a new two-way driveway from Rings End Road into the cul-de-sac of Great Island Road, and it shows that cul-de-sac having been purchased by the town. It will actually be a part of 23A at the end of the day. The remaining paved areas on the island are also too narrow for, safe two-way public access. So at least in the near term, the suggestion is that we institute a one-way circulation pattern to use those roughly 16-foot wide driveways in a one-way fashion, which would be plenty safe. And so there'll be some signage and striping that needs to get added to the island, again, in the near term to facilitate that one-way flow once we have a nice two-way driveway here. The reason we stopped here with the two-way was simply because we know that you have a lot of careful thought to do about the master planning of the island and where and how to make improvements on the island. So whether or not you wanted, say, the North Causeway to be a two-way driveway as well, the thought is to defer that into your consideration of the whole of the island. But really, in order to get public access as quickly as we can to at least passively enjoy the new town property, that we wanted to get this two-way driveway in because that's needed no matter what. This could be one way or the other, depending on how your thoughts about the master planning of the island unfold. So these are going to be technical drawings now. Until you get to Matt's drawing, you can see some trees and some sketches. But we're approaching this like the design of a new road. We zoom in a little bit on the plan view to start. So you see here, between a double curb, a 22-foot wide road, a grass snow shelf, and then a 5-foot wide sidewalk. Starting at the end of Rings End Road, there is a sidewalk that terminates right here. I think Ed has plans to bring that sidewalk down to the pull-off where everybody paints. There would be a ped ramp here, a new crosswalk across what's Pear Tree Point Road. The stop bar would move back, the stop sign would move back, and the sidewalk would pick up there and come all the way into the island. Out in the kind of existing public right-of-way space, we are proposing a concrete walk. Once we get past the gates, and Matt will talk about that in a little more detail, we're proposing an asphalt walk just to differentiate to maybe like a more commercial finish in the concrete walk and a more residential or rural finish in the asphalt walk. For the curbs, where do I want to go for there? For the curbs, we're actually proposing to salvage the granite block curbs that are lining the driveway today and use that granite block to line, I'm all over the place here, where's my, yeah, I guess it's here, okay, yeah, to line the future driveway. And that's pretty straightforward up through the end. We've looked at, making sure the roadway geometry is safe, making sure we have that pedestrian route all the way through to the cul-de-sac. It's close to 1,000 feet of road, so it's a pretty big. It's a pretty big project. Where's the hand? I really want the hand. Sorry, not my laptop, but
I use press H.
okay, thank you. That's yeah.
No.
So, this is the profile of the road. We are stuck a little bit with the existing approach to Pear Tree Point Road, which is a little bit probably steeper than you would do it if you were starting from scratch. But we're maintaining that same slope up the driveway. We're smoothing things out a little bit in the peaks and valleys, again, to provide a level of safety and comfort and drainage, really, to get the water flowing in all the right directions. So we take that profile, we project it on the plan, we get the grades. This is the grading plan with all the spot elevations of the proposed road. And what happens is, let me zoom in here, show a section more particularly. You see these light gray lines here and here. That's the existing driveway. So it turns out that existing driveway actually extends onto the Ziegler parcels on the west side of the road. So we have to move it. And then we have the sidewalk and the snow shelf and the curb. So we're not just widening the driveway, we're replacing the driveway and moving it over. So you can see it has to move over, the existing curb line has to move over a fair amount to the east or northeast to create the infrastructure necessary to get in and out of the island. So that as you drive up that driveway, if we go back to that street view, see if you can see it at all, the grade pitches up on the left side. At least in this part we're looking, in some areas it pitches down the other way. So that necessitates the inclusion of some retaining walls on that east side. This retaining wall, you'll be looking at the face of, it will be holding earth up behind it. And then the other two retaining walls are the other way around. We're filling, and then those retaining walls will go down to catch up with grade on the lower side. We have suggested that these be stone masonry retaining walls, but very particularly, we want to start matching the kind of character of the stone masonry use on the island. So, you get an example of it here with perimeter stone walls that go around the whole Ziegler estate. And so it's not cobbled stone masonry, and it's not a typical blast stone masonry, which might have a whole bunch of different angles. But the stone masonry that's used throughout the island, both on the walls and the architecture, is orthogonal or rectangular. So it's it's got those 90-degree angles, and so that's the intent for the design finish of those retaining walls. Go back up to where I was showing those. Yeah, there we go. So you can see those. So in here you would see the full face of the wall. Here we're looking into add alternate options of how to make it safe for the vehicles to travel near a wall that has a big fall on the opposite side. So there's two options. One is a wooden guide rail before the wall. We're considering that the add alternate option. The primary option, we're going to add a 2-foot parapet on the top of the wall to effectively function as that guide rail. So you would see 2 feet of wall here that would also function like a guide rail to protect vehicles from that edge. And you would see up to, I think, 5 feet of wall over here in that style that I talked about. As far as other particulars that relate to civil, we have to be cognizant of the utilities in the road. There is a sanitary sewer force main within the driveway today. There is an abandoned electrical service, so we don't have to worry too much about that one. But we do have to extend electrical to serve the new site lighting, so we'll have a new panel in the same vicinity as the existing transformer and existing panel over here. That's behind the piers and gates, so hopefully that'll be screened, and you'll see that on
When you say
that
site,
plan.
is that just 23A site?
Yes, that's correct. There's a transformer here that serves the gatehouse, the residents here. We'll tap off of that for the power to the site lights. The one thing that we need to do a little more digging on, there's a communication conduit that runs all the way down 23A to the cul-de-sac. And it is in conflict with some of the needed retaining walls. So we have Ed's going to do some research with the utility company to see if it still needs to be live, or if it can be discontinued. If it still needs to be live, we have an add alternate for relocating that conduit around the proposed construction. This is an increase in impervious coverage. So when we have hardscape increases, we have to be concerned about the related potential for increase in stormwater runoff, because less water will be soaking into the ground, more water will be running off. So we perform the stormwater calculations to make sure we're capturing that excess water and giving it an opportunity to infiltrate into the ground before it overflows and discharges the same way it does today. And so there's 3 locations. One is up towards the front. There's an existing pipe discharge into, some people call it the gut, some people call it the Darien River, downstream of the Rings End Bridge here. So we're tying into that existing discharge. But before we do so, we have an infiltration system to promote a mimicking of the existing condition and trying to infiltrate what we call the water quality volume into the ground, which is roughly the first inch of rainfall. But there's no downstream property owners between us and the sound. The second system is here on a low point. Again, new catch basins, infiltration system, discharge connecting into an existing 8-inch clay pipe that discharges into Scotts Cove. And at the end, there is an existing stormwater system in the cul-de-sac that discharges to the tidal pool to the south. That, again, we're collecting water in a catch basin, treating it in an infiltration system, and then it'll overflow in the same fashion that it overflows today. So I think that's going to be This is worth saying in the public forum, right? So when you look in the driveway, of course, there's a number of trees that have been placed to hug the existing driveway today, mostly spruces and evergreens, a few hemlocks. And they're just too close to that narrow driveway today, so when we move the driveway and widen the driveway, those trees are going to be coming out. And that's where that's probably the good segue into Matt's plan to show you how they're going to be replaced. But the X's indicate tree removal, the circles indicate tree protection. And I think I'll just call up your landscape plans. Gotta rotate these suckers. There we go. Rotate number 1. I'm just gonna get it set up for you if you don't mind. Rotate number 2. And rotate number 3. There we go.
Great. Good evening, Matthew Pop, landscape architect, professional wetland scientist with Environmental Land Solutions. We're in Norwalk. I live in Greenwich. I was a member of the Greenwich Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency for a number of years. I was on the Audubon board for 9 years, served as president, and I was on the Friends of Greenwich Point for 6 years, and my term expired. And when I think about this board, you guys may want to look into their bylaws, Greenwich Point. They're very good. They're very active. The things that they do there. So I have 3 drawings. The first one is the kind of the planting plan along the along the axis, the new road right through here. The second one is kind of an enlargement of the entryway here. And then the third is just some photos of, maybe we want for some lighting, how the pillar gets, do we light the pillars, how they get lit, and maybe some, lighting along the new road. Just starting off with the landscaping, as Craig mentioned, we are losing a number of trees. Right through in this area here is a number of spruces. You can kind of see their circles here that are kind of X'd out. There's 2 houses. One house here, there's another house here. So typically when I would do the plan, I would just have solid screening, evergreens all the way across. But I think that this house, it's high up. They do get some views over across the property to tidal waters here. So kind of in this area here, we have just deciduous trees, and along the property line, a smaller evergreen shrubs. Maybe they grow to 10 feet in height. But again, I was thinking that'd be important to keep those views open. So most of the plants are native, oaks. I try to stick with some black gum in here also. And then when we get through here, I do have some evergreens here in this area here. There's also views across the site, to this meadow area here that I thought was important too. The one area that it did have a lot of screening was right through here. When a car comes through here at night with the lights on and you make this turn, the headlights hit the house. So I kind of thought it was important to heavily screen this area here. And they're mainly screening with Norway spruce, which are right here, American holly, and green giant arborvitae. The trees that we're taking out here, they're very large. And I'm almost would be concerned about them falling, now anyway. So again, we'll just be replacing those. Just some other things on here. Maybe we can hit on. As we travel along the road, I wasn't sure if we needed, like traffic calming, like a Belgian block or a coarse paver, like here. I have another one here. Another one here, so when you're driving over it, the car kind of rumbles a little bit and slows you down. We did talk about site lighting. What the question was, do you have lighting evenly distributed all along the whole access way? Typically, a light fixture may be, 100 feet, 125 feet apart. But I think on this road, that, I didn't think that was needed. Try to keep it, park-like. So we only have 4 fixtures. I kind of have them circled here. There's one here. There's another one right through here. There's another one right over here. And there's one down here. So I try to keep it, one by the house up here, one halfway point, kind of the high point, one at the turn in the road, and then one kind of down, by the circle. Those fixtures, maybe it's for A or B, but typically there would be maybe, 8, 10 feet high, LED, downward pointing, a warm tone, like so it'd be 3000 K would be the color temperature of them. Let's see. So also where I have the light fixtures, they kind of align with the paver, so there's here and here.
Traffic calming.
Yep, for traffic. So here's the existing pillar is right through here. This is a cross-section looking in to the site. The property line is right on the edge of that pillar. So we thought that, without just going out to the neighbor's property, that pillar almost has to stay where it is until we get future approval that it could be relocated. But for these drawings, we kept that pillar exactly where it is. So this one doesn't move at all. Then we had the 5-foot sidewalk, and in between the sidewalk and the road, we had a 18-inch, 2-foot grass strip. Typically you don't want the sidewalk right up against the road. It's a little bit more comfortable if you're further back from the road. So again, so that's like a 7-foot distance from here to here. On this plan, we mirrored this pillar and this pillar. They're equal distance from the center line of the road. So they're back about 19 and a half feet or so, to the edge of the pillar. So they're equal. Some other things on here, again, maybe they're for A or B. How do you like the pillar? Is there a light that hangs down? Is there a sign on the pillar? So the other option was, again, this pillar stays the same. On the other drawing I just had, the pillar was back here, but we moved that pillar, the second pillar, closer to the road. So you can see, here's the center line of the road. We have 19 feet 6 inches to the pillar, but on this side it's 13 feet 8 inches. So it's not centered, but it's closer, and you kind of get that gate back here. And again, sign. They put a sign on the pillar. Is it circular? Is it square? Do you stick a light, on top of the pillars? So, actually, I should have showed. So this is this drawing here. So this is looking down. Here's the existing pillar, the drive coming in. So the question is, where this pillar goes. On this one, it's off-centered from the road, so it's right through here. And the other drawing, the pillar's further back. I did have, a paver, an apron as you come into this site. On this one, you can see the sidewalk, and then there's like a 2-foot or 18-inch grass strip along the access way. Let me just go back to on the landscape plan. There is a plant list. Right down here, it has the quantities, there's a key, the species, the scientific name, the common name, and kind of the sizes right through here. They're pretty standard plants. If the only one that maybe is a little bit unusual, I would say, is just this. I have like a pin oak or some large growing tree here. So being that this would be like the focal point coming in here, I think that it's important to have this tree, significant in size when you put it in. And then the last one is, all right, Craig, how do we zoom in? There we go.
Control.
There you go. So again, the pillar lighting, do you have a light fixture hangs off? Do you stick something on top that's raised up? Or is there a small fixture on top? you know, it's just the sconce hanging down, or if it, maybe it's just even just, the pillars just lit, from the ground lit.
Part of these options are anticipating a presentation to ARB where there might be more interest in a design conversation, and so we want to provide options to start that conversation.
Yeah, you don't want to go with them with a fixture that you like and they don't like it. So again, just different fixtures along the, you know, that I thought maybe would be, you know, somewhat suitable. This fixture here is actually in Darien, kind of behind the Starbucks area. Let's just see. I do have some other details, but a lot of these things are just maybe for A or B. You know, like the wording of the signs and, you know, where the sign is located. So again,
That reminds me, I do want to go back to one thing I didn't cover while you're doing.
so I think, you know, again, we have the walls here. This wall, the retaining wall here, is back about 5 feet, so we're able to plant in front of it. And there's a wall here. We have a guide rail in front of it, so there's not room to plant, so the trees are kind of on the back side of it. Again, I'm trying to keep the views from here across somewhat open. Screening here, and keeping these views, you know, open. And again, the question is, so how do we, you know, what do we do with the pillars up in front? So I think that's it. If there's any questions, you want to?
Yeah, we'll jump back on one thing and then we'll question. So one thing you might consider as a committee is, for lack of a better term, kind of how to brand the island. What does the sign look like? What does the sign say? And how does that then carry over into other signage that might end up existing on the parcel? So this particular exhibit goes hand in hand with that traffic circulation exhibit that I had shown you. This is the particulars of where we need signs. You know, sign A here will be the entrance. Sign B will be a no entry, exit only. There'll be some no entry signs where we don't want vehicles to go. We don't want public vehicles going down here or around that loop. We don't want public vehicles going here. So there's some no entry signs. And then where a lot of these driveways come back out, right, we have at those locations, you know, a one-way sign and a one-way stripe to remind folks of the traffic flow pattern. I have some sign suggestions here. I'm not at all married to that design. I'm only suggesting that we don't want to use the manual on uniform traffic control devices and have it look like a highway. That would be my recommendation. You work with a graphic designer and a sign company to come up with the color palette and the style that you want for all your signs there, and kind of use that throughout.
And even how they get mounted, are they on a wood pole, or is it a metal pole?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah, okay, so that, now I think we're open for questions, if you have any.
I have a question about the sidewalk.
Sure.
Had you considered concrete? You said you wanted more of the rural feel, but I'm just interested in the durability
Sure.
and especially smoothness for stroller pushers and wheelchair bound and the like.
Yeah, it was an aesthetic choice. In conversation with Ed, he has experience in areas where he chooses to put concrete sidewalks and in areas where he chooses to put asphalt sidewalks, and some of the general public opinion or comment related thereto. So again, it was an aesthetic choice to go with something that maybe feels a little more residential or rural in the asphalt versus a little more commercial in the concrete. That was the choice.
So we
But
brought
could be either
the
way.
concrete sidewalk, you know, from the road right up to the back of the pillars.
Yeah.
And then the back side of the pillars would be where it would change.
And the second question is, so it terminates there at the cul-de-sac. How is it
Correct.
anticipated pedestrians will safely get
That's-
onto the
Again,
roads from there?
the initial scope of our services were to get us through 23A
Okay.
and to the entrance of the island. Again, I think that is what the cul-de-sac wants to look like, right, as the gateway. How we then proceed from there, do we widen the road, do we add sidewalk, you know? these are open questions. Again, we thought for the bigger picture master planning of the island. Yes, sir.
Is your intent to have the bicycles ride with the cars on the road?
Yes.
And you had mentioned oak trees. They drop acorns, which aren't very safe for bicycles, just a consideration.
Great for wildlife, though. So, usually, if I'm out, I bird a lot, I'm always looking for oak trees in the springtime. I don't bike, so maybe that's my...
Your bias.
I'm biased, yeah. So, but maybe we put the oak trees, so we can put those like on the backside of the retaining walls, kind of further away from the road. And then, maybe the black gums and the other trees, closer, so.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
First, thank you for this terrific work product. Second, when you look at the differences between entry concept A and B, is it all aesthetic or is some of it utility? I don't mean utilities, I mean it in the broader sense.
I'll let Matt answer in a second. I think the hope is that when the transaction on that property takes place, at whatever pace that happens, that we might have a fuller conversation about the all the gates and piers, because you can see this, again, this is the property boundary here, and this is the right side of the gates and piers as you look at them. So that is not on town property, so we can't touch it unless we have permission or agreement or cooperation to do so. So I think there is a thought that maybe that conversation could occur in the future, but really we're best served right now to get what we need approved by solely focusing on just what we can do on the property that we control today, period. And so I think with that, it was really a aesthetic question of, do we want it symmetrical on the road, or do we want it as tight to the road as reasonable?
So my preference would be have it symmetrical to the road. And if you did have the ability to, work, on this pillar here, I probably would actually increase the size of those pillars because they're further back from the road. They're, whatever, 7 feet or so further back. If they were right on the road, I think the size is fine. They're like 3.5 feet wide. Maybe they go to like 4.5 feet wide and bigger, make them more substantial.
I also like what Matt chose to do on this option, where this just becomes a little bit of fence to an anchoring pillar, instead of kind of the condition you have today, which is you have a little bit of gate hanging there. With the narrow driveway, the gates have some relationship to purpose, but with the wider driveway, those gates don't really have a relationship to purpose. And so I think this solution was a good way to evoke how they feel today, but do it in a way that makes sense for the proposal.
Yeah, so again, an existing pillar here. We had it's an existing gate. Maybe just get that gate, put it on the back side, and then put a new pillar in the back, and that, so then that gate ties into a new pillar, a secondary pillar.
If the park closes, say at sunset, what's the idea for closing the access?
That's for you, Ed. I don't know that I guess you guys tell us. I don't think I would recommend trying to pull a gate across this wide road. So it might be a chain with a sign hanging on it if we get to a point where it's not occupied.
Yeah, but those other properties on the other side have access, so they could theoretically build there.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
And they
let's
would
go
need
back.
access, so we can't close the road off up there.
Thank you for pointing that out. So let's go back to this. So these 3 parcels have rights to access 23A and use it as a driveway. And of course, this one does use it today, so that's a great point, Monica. Thank you. So any restriction of access would have to occur back here if that's what you wanted to do. Yes, sir.
There's a lot to think about. Thank you. They're great drawings. The entryway, with it being a historical property and that everybody has, a pretty big footprint of what it's looked like for years there, right? And so when you approach there, see the left of the left column, how there's a gate that goes through behind the main column? So to follow up on Jeff's question about where the sidewalk ends, right, at the circle, and you're kind of on the wrong side of the circle at that point because you're trying to get into the property, so now you have to get around the circle one way or the other. So I hope that we get an opportunity to talk to whoever owns the property in the future and do what's right historically. I mean, I think we have mutual interests in trying to keep the historic perspective of the property intact. But as of right now, we don't have the ability to do anything on the right side. So with trying to get it open and trying to do it right and disrupt, I kind of scratch my head and wonder if with that entryway where you have like the cobblestones, like to keep the sidewalk coming up as you have, but then have a crosswalk immediately and then flip the sidewalk to the other side of the road so that you go through that gate essentially, that you're obviously moving the gate to the left.
There's gate on both sides, right? So we want that option too.
So you keep that concept and that your sidewalk goes through behind the gate.
Yeah.
And then because the gate is currently, the pair of gates is currently, if I remember correctly, as you come across Rings End Bridge, dead center on the center line. So this picture's taken from like the sidewalk as you're about to turn down Pear Tree Point. I think that photo's taken from like here right now. But I'm saying if you're here looking in, the historical perspective of driving down Rings End Road, you've got those pillars that were designed very purposefully to be the center, the focal point of the approach. And the more that we push to the left, the more we exacerbate the issue of it not being centered anymore. And so I've been trying to work that through in my head as to maybe by moving the sidewalk to the other side, it's sixes, right? Because it's the same space.
We can't do that. We can't do that.
We did look at it, and it was a part of the broader discussions of the purchase of the cul-de-sac.
It's, can't do it.
We have the space on that side. Part of this agreement was to keep a buffer on the south side, and we're using that 5-foot buffer to incorporate a sidewalk. There will be a 5-foot buffer there, no matter what. So in order to use the space in the most efficient way, we're putting the sidewalk there.
This house too, you need a crosswalk probably from this sidewalk, their private walk to get to it.
So the sidewalk is the buffer, is part of the buffer?
Exactly.
Got it.
So what we can do is, I mean, the sidewalk makes sense there because it feeds right down. There's a sidewalk right down.
Certainly makes sense on this side here.
It makes sense. And it's, putting it on the other side will make us take out even more trees, which we're trying to avoid. So what we'll probably end up doing is just putting a crosswalk down at the bottom, right? At the end of the circle, by the circle.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
You might end up having a walkway around the.
Yeah, that could be nice too. But then you'd be crossing traffic, which I'm not.
I mean, and how far in does that buffer come into play? Beyond the gatehouse property or?
the entire border,
It's all the way around to the traffic.
this border.
Okay. Well then, between A and B, I would say I like the one that keeps it closer to
Tighter,
the existing one for now because it maintains the historical perspective a little bit better. I agree with you on the center. Like if it were naturally centered, I would center it on the road too. But I kind of feel like the B keeps it less skewed to the eye as you're coming across
But
Rings End
to
Lane.
your point, right now, this piece is where the sidewalk gate is today.
Yep.
Right, so again, if we have a more holistic conversation about the whole entry. You know, maybe this pier wants to be set 2 feet off the curb, just like this one is, so you tighten it up, right? You know, I think, but this is what we're,
Well, you're
a
pushing
little
the
bit the
whole.
cards we're dealt with at the moment.
Aren't you pushing, if
You're
you
right.
do that, you're pushing
Yeah,
the
yeah,
whole
that-
thing
That gets to
on the
your
approach?
thought of, it seems to be aligned with the southbound lane of Rings End Road, where now it's going to be kind of center line to center line aligned.
So Craig, these are the kind of questions, to move this forward, do we need to answer A and B? Do we need to choose?
Well,
A?
I guess again, our thought on a lot of these options was, you know, there's a lot of folks that are going to have opinions and good ideas, and we wanted to leave some of these options on the table to go through the design process with ARB and solicit that comment, unless there was something that absolutely said, I can't have it this way. Let's not even submit that kind of thing. Yeah.
And that can be add or deduct alternates on the bid, so.
Yeah, and look, once we get, well, I think ultimately, I think at the end of the day, certainly we want whatever the final product of the gates to be understood by the approving authorities. So we want to get to that point. We want to narrow the choices down as we go through the process.
But to file these applications, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm on a schedule.
Yeah, sure.
To file these
Yeah.
applications, what do we
Keep
need
us
to
focused.
decide tonight?
That if there's anything you absolutely don't want us to show on the plans, we can take that off. If we've gone way off into left field and it's unrecoverable, we gotta wait. But basically, if there is a consensus that this is close enough to the right design and it's good time to start the entitlement process, that's the decision we need to make.
Okay. I have a couple questions. Matt, so you spoke about the bikes and you have the little rumble paths. How does that work with a bike, with a cyclist?
Well, they don't have to be that coarse. It's just, they could,
Textural.
Yeah, where I had, where I was environment, it's just stamped asphalt, and it's smooth.
Okay.
Or there's
So
no
it's safe.
frontage, there's pavers, like you could, they're pretty smooth too. You can drive right over them and you wouldn't even know you're driving over them. So,
So
It's
what's
a visual cue for the driver
Okay.
to say something's different here.
Okay.
And a slight textural, but it's not going to be a cobblestone road, it's just
All
going to be.
right, so it's not
like-
Belgian
yeah,
block,
yeah.
it's not a speed bump.
Like at Darien Commons, a couple of the crosswalks are in pavers, right? And they're smooth for the pedestrians, but they cue to the drivers, slow down.
Okay.
Like at the high school? They're elevated at the high school. but-
Yeah, we weren't thinking humps, no.
No, but the texture,
Yeah, textural difference is what I'm talking about, yeah.
So how do you feather in the asphalt and the concrete sidewalk?
It'll just stop at a seam,
Just to see, okay.
just go from one to the other.
And the stone walls, that's probably an expensive item.
It
And you're
is.
putting trees in front of that stone wall that's visible, so
Those trees in particular would have to be kind of higher canopy trees, because we also don't want the branches to stick out in the road. So in front of the wall, you'll see trunk,
okay.
not screening.
Okay.
it's a 5-foot width there, the landscape.
So the 5-foot wall is going to be stone, and we'll see it.
The landscape
Yes.
area is 5 feet, yeah.
You will definitely see the wall. You're right to be, buying cut block is different than just buying a truck of blasted rock. So you're right to be concerned about that. I think one of the things we were thinking about there was that the back side of these two walls,
Right.
we could relax that aesthetic concern and focus on the front side of the walls kind of thing.
All right, so that brings me to, so those two walls,
Yeah.
you said there's 2 feet that's visible.
2 feet exposed to the roadway side.
Right.
And, if you have that 2 feet exposed to the roadway side, there might be 5 or 6 or so feet exposed to the backside.
Okay. And you're thinking a stone facade on that 2 feet?
Right now, the detail is that the whole thing is made out of stone masonry. It's called a gravity wall. This is the detail. It's all rocks.
Right.
this is also an option, it could be a reinforced concrete core with stone masonry facing. It's not going to be cheaper. And then you get into, if cost was the driver, which always has to be a concern in a public forum, there's tons of retaining wall options from segmental block and large segmental block, and they try to dress them up and make them architecturally finished. Those are options too. But again, thinking about the whole, thinking about creating something for a 100-year legacy, this was our recommendation.
So typically, like if you have a drawing that's going before EPC, probably would reduce the number of trees, because I don't think they're more concerned about water quality, maybe shading the road. I don't know how concerned they are about the evergreen trees, for screening, maybe a little bit for CAM purposes. So this again is just like a wish list of how I thought it would be nice. So maybe for an EPC drawing, they just the plants that are needed for their concerns would be included. So.
Okay. So Matt, if we had the potential buyers' planting plan, you could take a look at that and mirror it, or maybe.
Oh yeah.
Right. Okay.
So, or we could just maybe just put a note on the plan just to say it's a typical landscape plan, so they know this is what we're aiming for.
You see very clearly, obviously, this is there's not a lot of proposed plantings on this side because we anticipate that the buyer is going to have a finish on that edge.
And that sidewalk kind of goes pretty close, almost right up to the property line. So any plantings in this area
Are going to
would be off
the
the
neighboring
site.
property. Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any cost estimates for all this?
We do not. We have not prepared one. Ed and I were speaking off the cuff, and there's a lot of scope here. Between the roadway, the curbs, the walls, the drainage, the utilities, the landscaping, the light poles, the electrical for the light poles. So here I'm going for this. You're kind of starting at $1 million, and after that, I'm a really bad estimator, and we should leave it to the market to give you better estimates.
How are we going to handle the irrigation of all the new plantings? Are we going to put underground irrigation?
I would say no irrigation. Usually, just have to make sure they're watered the first year. But all these trees, they're native to here, or mostly all native to here. And like oak trees and black gums, you see them around, they're not getting irrigated anywhere. So the spruces, so it's just the first year.
All right, so that's manpower.
And there's some pretty serious. I saw you had some pretty serious deer.
Browsing.
Oh yeah. So I did use you try to use deer-resistant plants if there's such a thing. There'd be a lot of plants on here that I would love to use, but I just wouldn't use. Some of the plants in this area that are evergreen that aren't native, I used them because they're deer resistant. Some of the viburnum and the cherry laurel and the inkberry. That's actually a native plant. So we use bayberry, which is the deer. Keep away from that. So you hope that the deer don't browse on them, but you just keep a lookout for the trees, to make sure that that the deer aren't rubbing up against them and going back to park. So
So Matt and I were out and we talked to, we reached out to both neighbors and were able to connect with 152. And that house has, it's definitely impacted by this. That's why Matt was looking at putting the trees in there. But maybe when people take a look at this, they're going to wonder about the gate.
Mm-hmm. How much is zoom in on that?
So, yeah. So the one thing they requested was just a gate so she could access the site without going all the way around. So I did show a gate, and it's kind of screened, so that you would be able to see it from driving in. And she mentioned it several times. That's what she wanted. She actually wanted a road through there, but Yep, I don't think that would be possible.
Yeah, she was contemplating driveway access onto the road, which probably is not going to work. And
Gate seems like a nice compromise.
who owns that fence, the metal fence that's falling down?
That's a surveyor question, I think. Craig
tight,
will
it's
blow
tight.
that up and.
Yeah, let me go to the
Zoom there for a
survey.
second, but-
We have to
There is
fix
a fence
that.
along here. It's on top of both the walls. It's not in a great.
Oh, other
shape.
side. Yeah, we're talking here.
Yeah.
So it's, would be on this one.
Metal with
Yeah,
openings like
it's just a chain link
that big.
fence. It's falling down.
So this chain link fence, at least in the moment, is on the neighboring property. You can see that gray line for most of it. No, but then it kind of comes back the other way a little bit too. So parts of that fence are going back and forth over the line. So we're proposing a new fence. That's this one right here. So ostensibly, we'd be taking out the old fence with permission where it wasn't on our property.
And then the granite blocking, oh, sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead, Monica.
The granite blocking, do we have enough?
For the curb?
That curving?
Yeah, because you actually see the cobblestone gutter has it on both sides.
Okay.
So
we only need that one
again, our
side.
hope is we can salvage
Half.
enough. Yeah, half.
Got it. Okay, sorry, Mark.
No, no worries, Monica. So, Craig, since you're zooming in and out, you mentioned the downhill retaining wall, 5-6 feet on the backside.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier an uphill retaining wall.
That's this
I
one.
can't see it. Okay,
Yeah.
So the downhill one has the guide rail in front.
right.
So
Okay.
When you guys say a downhill retaining wall, that means that it's holding,
Earth up, yeah.
that's on the corner of the
Yeah, I'll show
Scotts
you.
Cove Inlet, right?
Yeah,
It's on the
there's
corner.
two low
Right.
points as you go down the road. There's a low point here where Scotts Cove kind of bumps in, and then there's the one you see more readily towards the end. And so in both of these locations, this wall and this wall are holding the road up. The road is filling up
And that would be
to the
new
wall.
because we're pushing
Correct.
closer that way,
Correct.
right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, you can see
Because
the,
there's no existing retaining wall, right?
correct, yeah, you can see the position of the existing outside edge of the driveway today
Yeah.
versus the proposed.
Right. So if I'm reading this properly, the uphill is much smaller wall, 3-4 feet.
Yeah, so, yeah, I can go to the grading plan. So we have some top wall, bottom wall shots here. I think this is the highest point, which is 4.5 feet of retainage, 5 feet of exposed.
Right, so the backside of that
Is 6 inches. The backside of this is 6
Dirt.
inches.
Yeah.
Yeah, just for drainage. Yep.
And so the abandoned electrical, can we repurpose that at all?
You know, we're gonna have to look at, I think Craig and I talked about the utilities in those areas, but I just mentioned to Tony, I said, we're gonna be digging to put conduit in for the lighting. It probably wouldn't hurt as we put a conduit up that roadway to put a spare, and if we end up having to relocate the communication line, we may be doing that all
We're
at
digging the
same
trench
time.
anyway, yeah.
We're gonna be digging the trench anyway.
yeah, you probably would have a couple conduits across the road. Anyway. Yep.
So what does everybody think?
Monica, today we received a resident letter suggesting there was a way to keep this one way in and one way out. I didn't really
Yeah, that.
completely understand. I thought it had to do with the fact that those aren't really roads we have a
Yes.
right to do anything
Yeah.
with, but
Yeah, there was a resident that contacted us about coming in off of Long Neck Point.
Right.
That's why I said earlier that that's a private road and
That's-
that we do not, the town does not have access to that.
that's what I thought, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure I understood.
Yeah, this has to happen in any scenario. That's why it was put forward as the first major proposal.
Be nice to have another 30 feet of width there.
You know, every site gets small.
Just like 95. Another lane.
I know, it would be nice, it would, but
Yeah, you envision, you know, you could create the alley of trees with gracious space
Yeah.
on both sides, but I think,
But this, with a transaction occurring, I mean, I think we should definitely, if a transaction occurs, not waste any time in trying to have a conversation.
yeah,
Whoever.
we want
Because
both folks to be happy,
it's-
or both sides to be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think there could be a scenario where they end up happier.
Yep.
But certainly, you want to go into negotiation knowing you have your solution on your property.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we can do it. I think
Yeah.
you've done a great
Yeah.
job presenting it. It just, there's,
All I'll say is that this has been a really long,
Arduous
arduous,
to get here.
to get here, and I don't see a lot of movement from this point forward. So I think that this is what we should be contemplating, so. So outside of the A and B, do you have any other thoughts, anything else that you want to bring forward? Ed, do you have any thoughts?
No, I stopped about a half hour ago.
Okay. All right, message received. Any other thoughts? Okay, well, I personally am really excited about this, okay? This is like what we need to do to get people onto the island, so. Okay, so do you want us, can you go forth without us choosing A and B and give us time?
Yeah, I mean, this
or-
is just, I think get the process started. is
For
what I'm
EPC,
saying.
we can give them both options, just.
Yeah, they might have an opinion,
Yep.
I'm sure they will.
so leave them both on there.
Okay. All right.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, so then Craig, you will go ahead and submit that?
We will.
Right, okay, tomorrow morning.
Tomorrow morning.
Okay, so next item on the agenda is,
Do we need to vote on that at all, or a sense of the committee? Or-
do we, is everybody in favor of Craig presenting what we've seen here tonight, minus the decision between A and B to the EPC, and you're going to do P&Z and A
Yeah,
and B also,
ARB
right?
and P&Z follow next week, so.
Right, so it would be to all of
They
them.
start the land use entitlement process. is what
Yeah,
we're-
so I'm sorry.
If I could just ask for clarification on what we would be acting on, is that the opinion of the GIAC or the GIAC making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen? I just unclear what we're doing specifically. I get big picture what we're doing, but
Right,
I don't know.
right.
Well, and I have just one more comment, which is just we can't get to first base on the island until we get this 23A done. So we have to have two-way in, out, right, as Monica said. So we have to do something. I mean, I think we've got, it's
Yeah.
kind of an A and B right
Yeah,
now.
like, you know what, you're right, for process. So you know what we'll do is we'll call, Board of Selectmen will call a special meeting, 5-minute meeting, and we'll vote on this.
Yep.
Okay,
So-
because.
so we're recommending-
Yeah. So this will be, the Great Island Committee will be making a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen that we go forth with this. And
We'll convene that almost immediately.
yes, we will convene that as soon as can we do that tomorrow morning?
I don't know if it can be quite that fast, but we better we get on.
Yeah, because we need to get this, to meet this calendar that I handed you, it needs to go before, well, it should have been before EPC. To get on their calendar, they need 7 days, is it, Tony?
Yeah, the normal deadline was today. They
Yeah.
gave us a 1-day grace period.
Tell you what, let me talk to Kate and Wayne tomorrow, let's see how
Yes.
formal that needs to be.
Yeah,
But-
it might not,
Yeah,
I would
I'm
ask,
not an
I would
expert,
ask
just
them,
asking.
because it might not
We may not
necessitate a meeting of the Board of Selectmen to rubber stamp this submission, which isn't final anyway, because there is an A and B aspect to it, but certainly Wayne and Kate could tell you lickety-split whether or not it's required. I'm not
It sounds
certain.
like I might have the direction from the first selectman to file the application.
File the application.
Yeah, well, and you have 3
I
out
was
of
going
the
to say, you have
5.
3 out of the
Yeah.
5.
Right.
So,
And the majority of the board's here anyway, so just
Yeah.
go do that.
but we will have a formal.
Yeah,
We will
understood.
formally approve
Yeah,
it.
no, I think it makes sense.
Okay. So, can I have a motion? Mark, help me here.
I'll make a motion that the GIAC recommend to the Board of Selectmen that we move forward with the plan as presented with the 2 versions. I guess you don't need that last part,
Yeah. That's presented.
as presented.
As presented, okay. Second,
Second.
anyone? Mike seconds, all in favor? Okay.
to the races.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. That's terrific. Really good.
Okay. Next time on the agenda, just other matters. Jeff has been working on communications. Do you want to give us like a little quick update?
Very briefly, I had a phone meeting with Linda O'Leary on November 1st, and we talked about maybe some short-term things to do with the website. I think longer term, I have a little bit of a concern that you've got to search in two different places to get the meeting minutes, and then, I'm assuming people who are motivated can find that, and then the advisory committees, which has, a great photo montage in the presentation, and the committee charge, and then the FAQs. We talked last meeting about maybe building out some FAQs. Those are FAQs about the operations of the committee. And I think since we have moved forward, we've identified some things that we want to make sure we're communicating consistently on. So that would be a simple thing just to post on that existing page. I think now that the meeting schedule for 2024 is set, that maybe should be posted on there too. Longer term, and I mentioned this last time, I think having an alias domain name like Great Island Darien or something might be good, just if we're out and about, you just want to have a simple thing rather than an extended link. I'm not an IT person, but I don't think it's a huge task that you could link that back to the minutes and the other materials on that other page. I think at some point it would be good to consider having a Great Island homepage, particularly as we get into more robust public engagement, and that could include, copies of plans and things like that, all kind of as a one-stop center. The other things I think would be contingent on, getting our consultant on board, because they may have some ideas about harvesting input, but I think that, maybe some sort of a jot form. My old job, we did a lot with that, and it just makes it easier to sort comments than it is on emails and the like. So I guess short term, I would be happy to work on preparing a draft of the other types of FAQs that we might consider, and I've got some notes, I think, Mark, maybe some others of you, but I would encourage anybody who would like to work with me on that to get me some feedstock for that, and then I would propose to present that at a future meeting. I don't want to step out on the limb and say this is our answer to that question without everybody's eyes on it, but that would be my proposed course going forward.
Okay. So if anybody has any ideas, suggestions, please share them with Jeff, right? Okay, the last item that I have is the calendar, and we have the calendar, I think, handed it out to you, or maybe
It was
you sent
emailed.
it out?
It was
Okay. So we have the start time at 6 o'clock. That's because this room is used by another commission, and we're younger, so we have to work with the previous schedule. So we'll be starting at 6. And does that
What
work
time
for-
does the other commission start? Is that all determined? Okay, so those
7:30.
meetings will be
7:30, yeah.
an hour?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so if it started at 6:30,
Yes.
and we need everybody out, and so if that's okay with everyone, okay?
That's
Works?
fine.
Works?
Yeah,
Okay.
I just know the schedule, I believe, is the third Wednesday of the month, which is what we'd all agreed on. I noticed in the newsletter, the town newsletter that went out last week, it said the fourth Wednesday.
Okay, we'll correct that. And everybody has a hard copy?
Yep.
Okay, okay. There are no other comments or thoughts? May I have a motion
Do
to
we
adjourn?
need to approve the last time?
Oh, I forgot. Did we put that at the bottom?
You did.
Okay. Last item, review and approve the October 18th minutes. Any edits, corrections, changes?
I was present. I sent it to Linda
Okay.
to modify.
To correct it?
Yeah, to correct it. but-
Okay.
Question about the transformer. It says it will arrive tomorrow. Was this a removal of the transformers or the arrival of the transformer?
Removal of the old transformers.
Well, this says arrival.
Okay. we'll change that too.
That's in paragraph 5.
Yeah, Monica, in section 3, it's your remarks. It says, Ms. Midnight reported that they are good to go, which I think we know what you were talking about, but for formal minutes, a reader might not know what you were talking about.
Oh.
So you might want to say, reported that the Great Island community tours are good to go, or something
Yeah, okay.
more specifically what it was you were talking about.
Okay. Mark, you want to start taking minutes?
I can hand this to you.
No,
I think there was
no.
there was one typo, but, yeah, one typo
Can I
there.
have this?
You sure can.
Okay. So with those edits and corrections, deletions, et cetera, can I have a motion to approve? Mike moves.
Second.
Jeff seconds. All in favor? Unanimous. Terrific. And I didn't say anything, but the tours were
Awesome.
really, really wildly successful. I really appreciate everybody. We had some star, I can't even point out, because we had many star people on the bus giving the directions, tour directors, looking at one. And obviously, we have Kip Vesey, our movie star, who Jim Cameron filmed. So anyhow, it was a really great event, great day. So that's it. Did I call for a motion to adjourn? I did, right?
Nope.
May I have a motion to adjourn? Mike moves. Lori seconds. All in favor? All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.